But Kevin Gausman has been, and nobody's really talking about it, but he's been quietly disappointing since the All-Star break. Do you want to break down his numbers for us here, Adam?
Yeah, well, I started looking at his numbers here, getting ready for the show. And I couldn't really find doesn't bode well for Kevin Gausman, but I couldn't really find a stopping point. Like if we look at his numbers the last 3 starts, ERA of 5.68, not good. But you're like, well, it's a small sample size, just the last 3 games, right? But then you go back another 2 games, ERA 5.4. That's not good. You go back
all the way back to the All-Star break.
Another 2 games, 4.97. Yeah, you go all the way back to the All-Star break. He's got an ERA of 4.27 since the All-Star break.
And there are some things to consider in this. Obviously, he has been a big-time team player. We watched that game against the Rays where they won 11-6, or I think it was 11-7, and they wound up leaving Kevin Gausman in until the 8th inning there because they had their bullpen day, so they needed as much rest as possible. And I think had they taken Kevin Gausman out when he had only allowed 3 runs at the end of the 6th inning, he would have been much better off, and then they wound up giving up 3 more runs over the inning and a third or whatever that he was left out there. Great for the team, great for the bullpen. It worked out the next day. It's one of the reasons the Blue Jays wound up winning that series is because their bullpen was able to kind of rest themselves enough that when leverage became high, you had those Anthony Basses and Jordan Romanos of the world available. So, big-time team player on Kevin Gausman's part, but also, he's getting touched up. He's giving up runs.
Look, there was a time frame in August where, we kind of spent most of the season saying Alek Manoah for game 1, right? And looking at each other in a pretty solid agreement. But there was a stretch post-All-Star game. There's like a 5-game run where Gausman had an ERA under 2.
Yeah.
It was just rolling, and this was right around the same exact time that Alek Manoah was
struggling a little.
To say the least. It was the worst stretch of his season for Alek Manoah.
Of his career.
Of his career, really, yeah. He has bounced back since then, but it is just worth noting that, the tides have changed, and I don't know how much confidence we have in Kevin Gausman getting... he's going to pitch one of our playoff games, right? But
yes.
Has Stripling surpassed Kevin Gausman in the confidence level of being a starting pitcher in the playoffs this year?
If you're asking me right now, September 16th, who my playoff pitchers are for this Toronto Blue Jays team, it's Alek Manoah game 1. It is 100% Ross Stripling in game 2. Kevin Gausman getting game 3. And you're crossing your fingers and hoping that you don't even need to use Kevin Gausman until the division series. I have faith in Kevin Gausman, and his splitter is nasty, and when he is on, he is probably the best pitcher on this team. That said, we just went over his numbers for the last 2 months. Do you want to roll out the guy who's got a 4.24 ERA? Or do you want to roll out the guy who has an under 2 ERA since the All-Star break, which is Ross Stripling? Since he's come back from injury, Ross Stripling has been lights out, and Ross Stripling's been lights out all season long. He's only pitched 125 innings this year, but there's no way he doesn't get some Cy Young Award votes. Listen, and I'm not saying that he's going to be in there with Verlander and McClanahan and even Dylan Cease or Manoah. Even Valdez out of Houston is going to get more votes. But there is definitely an argument for Ross Stripling getting votes in that top 10.
There's an argument to be made, but I got to push back on that a little bit. I don't think he's a Cy Young vote getter this year.
You don't think he'll get any Cy Young votes? That's fair. I think he will.
The innings pitched is so much lower than everybody else. But
he was in the bullpen.
Yeah, I mean, you're right, but I mean, maybe the most impressive stat line of Ross Stripling this year is just his days of rest line. Like he's got 1 game with 0 days rest, 2 games with 1 day's rest, 1 game with 2 days rest, 1 game with 3 days rest, 13, 5, and 2 with 4, 5, and 6 days rest as a starter. So like that does illustrate the versatility there.
It does.
But,
and he's going to finish the season with just under 150 pitches or 150 innings pitched.
is he going to get to 150?
I don't think he'll hit 150, but he'll be right around there. He'll break 140. He's got 3 starts left.
He's at 119 right now. So let's give him 18 more innings.
Yeah, okay.
That puts him to
so he'll be just under
137.
140. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if a guy who's a part-time starter, and I know that's very
unfair to say.
It's a very rude light to put it in, but I just don't know if he's going to get the same love from the voters that as a Jays-centric podcast, like we're very aware of the versatility of him, and I don't think.
And that's very fair. And I mean, obviously, we've already talked about this. I truly believe that when it comes down to it, Justin Verlander is going to walk away with the Cy Young Award. He's right now sitting at an ERA of 1.84. He's coming off of the IL this week. He's pitched 152 innings, so we can probably throw another 18 on there for him as well. He'll hit 170. He's averaging over 9 Ks per 9 innings. You know, even Shane McClanahan, who we just watched completely dominate the Blue Jays yesterday in that final game of the Rays series, he's sitting at a 2.13 ERA. He's pitched 152 innings, but he averages 11 strikeouts per 9. And then Dylan Cease, even though he walks the world, is averaging 11.5 strikes per 9 and is leading the league in Ks, which is pretty huge, especially considering he's got a 2.16 ERA. Alek Manoah's in there with a 2.43 ERA. Valdez out of Houston is there, and he leads in innings. Valdez is sitting right now at 179 for innings pitched. Manoah just under him with 177. Yeah. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be an interesting Cy Young vote. There are a lot of it's a much closer race than last year, which kind of became a 2-person race between Robbie Ray and Garrett Cole. This is for sure a 5-person race. Like all 5 of these guys, I don't think anyone can argue any 5 of them winning, right?
No, absolutely not.